This is the Security Nexus Deep Dive.
You know, in the world of authoritarian regimes, there's this really deep contradiction right at the heart of state security. To stay in power, a leader has to control their intelligence services. That makes sense. But what happens when that control becomes a stranglehold? Well, the very act of securing power can end up shattering the tools you need to keep it.
And that gets us right to the core of what we're talking about today, the Purge Paradox. It's this incredible self-inflicted wound where an autocrat, absolutely terrified of threats from within, systematically dismantles their own ability to see and understand the world. They're trading real-world effectiveness for absolute loyalty. So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to break down this paradox piece by piece. First, we'll dig into the autocrat's dilemma. Then, we'll look at a really clear pattern of this self-harm through some recent case studies. After that, we'll see exactly how a purge causes an operational collapse. And finally, we'll explore the flip side, how this creates a massive strategic opportunity for their enemies.
Okay, so let's really get inside the autocrat's head here. For a dictator, the entire world is viewed through one single lens: personal survival. So in that worldview, an intelligence service that brings you bad news isn't giving you a vital course correction. No, it's seen as a potential source of dissent, and dissent is the ultimate threat.
This quote really gets right to the heart of it. Researchers Dillon, Geo, and Grossfield point out that this fear of losing control is just so overwhelming that it forces the leader to put loyalty above everything else. They would literally rather have a loyal, incompetent spy agency than a competent one they can't fully trust. And that right there is the trap.
And look, this isn't just some abstract theory. This pattern of self-harm, it repeats itself over and over again in different regimes all across the world. Let's just take a quick look at 3 recent snapshots.
Remember the failed coup attempt in Turkey back in 2016? Well, what followed was a purge of staggering proportions. I mean, more than 20,000 military personnel were kicked out, including a whopping 81% of their staff officers. They even used this algorithmic system they called the fetometer to justify these mass dismissals, completely gutting the command structure of a key NATO ally.
Then you've got Saudi Arabia in 2017, that so-called anti-corruption purge. It was a textbook power grab. It's a classic move, and scholars like Goldring and Matthews have written about how dictators use purges to just eliminate rival elites. And it worked, right? Power was centralized, but the price was a serious degradation of professional intelligence tradecraft, as all the experienced hands were replaced by loyalists. And finally, a really recent and powerful example, Russia. Before the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, the FSB's Fifth Service was feeding the Kremlin exactly what it wanted to hear: super optimistic, totally politicized intelligence. Well, when that analysis failed, and failed spectacularly, what came next? A purge, of course, targeting the very people who produced the bad intel. It's a perfect loop of failure leading to a purge, which only makes things worse.
So it's one thing to know that these purges happen, but we really need to understand how they completely hollow out an organization from the inside. It's not just firing people. It's a systematic dismantling of capability. There's this fantastic term for it, something the analyst Caitlin Talmadge talks about a lot: coup-proofing. It's the deliberate act of making your own military and intelligence services less effective at their main jobs, like fighting wars, specifically to make them less effective at overthrowing you. Think about that. It's a calculated decision to make your security apparatus weaker.
And the result of all this coup-proofing? Well, it's a cascade of failures. You end up with these massive counterintelligence gaps because your security services are looking inward, hunting for dissidents, not outward for foreign spies. You lose decades of institutional knowledge just overnight. And, maybe most critically, you get politicized analysis. Kevin Reel's work on the FSB is a prime example. Intelligence stops being about reality and starts being about reinforcing whatever the leader already believes.
So while the autocrat is busy dismantling their own house, they're throwing open a huge window for their adversaries. One regime's internal paranoia becomes another's golden opportunity.
For an opposing intelligence service, the playbook here is pretty straightforward. First, you identify the blind spots. They're predictable. You know their analysis is garbage. You know they've lost expertise. Second, you suddenly have a brand new pool of potential recruits. Thousands of highly trained, experienced officers who are now angry, disgraced, and looking for payback. And finally, you exploit the chaos, the gaps, the fear, the total inability to see things clearly.
This brings us to the final part of the story, and honestly, it's probably the most troubling. This isn't a one-off event. The Purge Paradox is a self-perpetuating cycle, a feature that's just baked into the operating system of many authoritarian regimes.
So why does this keep happening? Because, and this is the grim part, it works, for the leader anyway. Research from scholars like Easton and Siverson shows a direct correlation. Authoritarian leaders who carry out more severe purges, we're talking imprisonment, executions, they tend to stay in power longer. Survival is the ultimate incentive, and the purge is the proven tool. They are literally rewarded for the very behavior that weakens their own state.
So where does that leave us? With a pretty stark conclusion. This cycle of paranoia, purge, and weakness, it's inevitable. So the real question for international security isn't if another authoritarian regime will cannibalize its own intelligence services. The question is when it's going to happen next, and who will be ready to exploit the opportunity when it does.
Understanding these dynamics is absolutely crucial for navigating the security environment we're in today. If you want to delve deeper into topics just like this one, you should visit thesecuritynexus.net. We're a Maryland-based national security consultancy, and we specialize in strategic advisory and public engagement. Through our podcasts, blogs, and training, we provide insight into everything from cyber threats to hybrid warfare. Our whole mission is to inform, educate, and empower people with clear, actionable knowledge.
Thanks for joining us. Listen, learn, and stay ahead.